Okay, just like Betty, if you'd like, you can pop in here and ask me a question. I have another question over here, but I'm going to go ahead and cover our openings. I usually do that around 3 o'clock, and I know I've got a few people sitting here waiting for an update. So let me go ahead and do that update. I'm going to start talking about last week. We did skip last week and trying to work out some of these technology issues. And I do have one opening from last week that has not opened yet, and I'll tell you about right now, and then I'll go ahead and jump into this week. So last week we found 3 new Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list openings and added those to our database. And 2 of them were really small. The one that we highlighted was Rock Hill, South Carolina, which if you follow politics, it was just recently in the news. If I'm not mistaken, MSNBC did a candidate forum with the Democratic candidates in Rock Hill, if my memory serves me correctly. Anyway, Rock Hill, South Carolina, the Housing Authority of the City of Rock Hill, Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is opening soon. It's opening from November 16th, 2015 until December 1st, 2015. The Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is opening for 1 day only on December 3rd from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So let me back up. This was a complicated one. You have from November 16th to December 1st to get a copy of the application, and then you must submit that application on December 3rd. So pre-applications will be available in person and by mail. You'll need to contact the Housing Authority to get a copy of the application, again, between November 16th and December 1st, and then you must deliver that application to the Housing Authority on December 3rd between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. We don't know how many applicants they'll be placing on the waiting list. We haven't been able to find that out, but to get some more details about that opening, go to Affordable Housing Online and search for Rock Hill, South Carolina, and we've got all the information there, and we'll continue to track it and post what we know there. Okay, so that was what we had last week, and then on to this week's. We have 3 to talk about this week. First of all, this is Los Angeles County, California, and it's not an opening. It's an alert that their public housing waiting list is closing. We just did find a news story where the Los Angeles County Housing Authority has announced they are closing their public housing waiting list on December 17th. They had opened it back up back in August and had said that it was going to be open through next year. And in fact, I think the original closing date was June 30th, 2016, but they've just changed that closing date because they have gotten so many applications for public housing in Los Angeles County. Pre-applications are available online, in person, and by phone. There's one preference for select apartment communities. There is no known limit on how many applicants they're going to place on the waiting list, but remember that you must apply by December 17th, 2015 at 4 o'clock Pacific time, or that waiting list will be closed. You can find out more on our Los Angeles County, California page. Another one, and this is a statewide organization that manages a bunch of different waiting lists for various counties in Michigan. So and I'm going to butcher this name, I know it. In Mecosta County, Michigan, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority is opening the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list. It's been open since October 19th, and it's open until December 21st. Pre-applications are available online only. There is one preference, and there's no known limit of how many applications they're going to accept. You can get details on that by going to Affordable Housing Online and searching Mecosta County, Michigan. And then the other opening also in Michigan, also part of the Michigan State Housing Development Authority offering, is Osceola, probably butchered it again, County, Michigan. And that waiting list is open and opened on August 24th, and it is going to remain open until December 21st. Again, pre-applications are available online only. There is one preference. And again, the same as Mecosta, there are no known limits on how many applicants they're going to place on the waiting list. If you would like to have details about that, you can go to Affordable Housing Online and search for Osceola County, Michigan. Okay, so that's our brief update. We're heading into the end of the year and the holiday season, and November always seems kind of light on the Section 8 waiting list openings that we find. But then all of a sudden, for some reason, in December, we start to see a bunch of announcements of coming openings in fairly large places. So keep listening, keep tuning in, coming back to Affordable Housing Online and checking. Sign up for our email alerts. We send out an email every Wednesday. Some of you are sitting there listening to me right now because you came in through our email, and Twitter, Facebook. We post all of our new openings there. You can find out about it there. All right, I'm going to go back into questions. If anybody wants to ask me something, I have an open seat. Nate just threw a question up on the board for me. If you want to come in and ask me a question on the fly, feel free. Just hit that call in button that's sitting right there below me. So the question: I live in LA and I'm waiting for my background check to get approved. How long will that take? And should I start looking for apartments? Well, I'm assuming that this is for a voucher, and if it is, then you definitely need to start looking for an apartment. You should have started looking for an apartment a while ago, because that means that they're in the final process of vetting you, of qualifying, approving you for the voucher program, and the clock's going to start ticking on you really soon. Background checks don't take very long. In fact, they're done by computer. So they enter your social security number and other information about you, and usually a national background check is produced in minutes. So when they're doing a background check, it doesn't take very long. And so assuming that you don't have any criminal background that is going to trigger a problem, you should expect to be moving through that process very quickly. And I would say you need to start looking for an apartment pretty soon. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problem as the first question I answered, and that is, hey, I have a voucher, the clock's ticking on me, I can't find a place, what do I do? So yeah, you should definitely start looking for an apartment now. So Nate, do I have another question? While Nate's posting another question for me, if you'd like to call in and ask me anything on the fly, feel free. I always like being challenged. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly get back to you, but usually I have enough knowledge rolling around in this little head to figure something out. All right, what do we have? I am afraid to put my social security number on the online pre-application because of hackers. Is it safe to give this information? Well, that is the question of today, right? The age that we live in right now. You hear about hacking all the time. Sony Pictures, Target, the US government with government employee information. I can tell you this. Everybody that uses the web runs a certain amount of risk when you're transmitting personal information over the web. Absolutely, right? Can't avoid that. If you're following the right security procedures, and the companies you do business with are doing the same, the risk is very, very, very small. And I believe the risk is, the risk is so small that it's worth using the internet to transact business like that. And I absolutely believe that the risk is very, very small for online pre-applications for Section 8 and public housing and other housing applications. I believe that risk is very, very tiny. of hackers getting your information. And I think that that risk is so tiny that the benefits of online applications far outweigh those risks. With that being said, it has happened, right? I don't want to falsely accuse a housing authority. I'm remembering a news story from West Texas, and I think we may have even highlighted this particular incident in a blog post that we did a few months ago about this. We specifically have a blog post in our blog about pre-application security, and Nate, if you'll post links to that blog post so people can take a look. But literally, they had an old-fashioned system where applications came in on paper, and then they took the applicant's information, they put it in a spreadsheet, right? And they would sort that spreadsheet randomly. That's how they did their lottery. And they'd have a person's rank on the waiting list and their social security number, right? But what they would normally do is block out the first digits of the social security number. So it's like, it would be star, star, star in the last four. Well, somebody at the housing authority made a mistake and uploaded the spreadsheet to their website that had the social security numbers that weren't blocked out. So they put up a spreadsheet with 1,000 social security numbers of Section 8 applicants. And they put it on their website on like December 23rd. And then they took off for Christmas. And lo and behold, something on the 28th, 29th, it comes to their attention that it's been up for 5 or 6 days, and 1,000 people had their social security numbers exposed on the internet for a week. The housing authority ended up doing, they ended up buying all those folks, credit monitoring and apologizing. So that's kind of a paper-based system error that ended up exposing that information, but it happens, and when, that was human error. It wasn't a hacker, but that's the risk you take. I would suggest though that it's worth the risk. The vendors that supply software products to housing authorities certainly keep in mind security. Most housing authorities don't manage online applications with their own technology software systems. They're using third-party systems that are developed by companies that have resources and security staff. So you should generally feel safe applying for Section 8 through a public housing authority. But you also need to pay attention to scams, because there's a lot of sites out there that say that they're that you're applying for Section 8 and you're not. It's fake, like section8application.com and some others that we've written about. Again, we've written articles about these scams on our blog. If you go to our blog, affordablehousingonline.com/blog, you'll find, if you go scan through, you'll find articles about those scams. Those guys, it is not safe to apply there because you're not really applying. They're taking your information, they're using it for marketing purposes, sending you spam email, or worse yet, applying credit cards in your name. So anyway, yeah, I would say, is it safe to give this information? I'd say it's safe enough. It's just as safe as, managing your bank account online or whatever. So it's a personal decision, but in my case, I think it gives more people access and more benefits come of online Section 8 applications than doing it otherwise. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. So what are the requirements to be an affordable housing landlord? So I'm assuming the question is, what are the requirements of becoming a Section 8 landlord? And it's not too difficult, but if some landlords just don't want to take the time to go through the process, there's some paperwork, there are inspections involved. You have, first of all, you have to pass physical standards inspection. So there's going to be an inspector come out from the housing authority, and they're going to go through the property, and they're going to make sure that it's safe and it's clean. and there's no health issues, they're going to make sure that there's, that there are working smoke detectors, that there is, windows are opening and closing. They're going to make sure that the place is clean, that the cabinets aren't falling off the wall, that there's no potential for lead-based paint chips to be eaten by babies. They're going to come out and do an inspection. There's a whole physical standards list. It's documented. There's an inspection checklist that you can go out and take a look at. Just Google Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 checklist, and there's a PDF file that is literally the inspection checklist that the housing authority inspector will use. So you have that, and then you also have to agree to specific lease provisions and agreement, housing assistance payments agreement with the housing authority that's going to say this is how I'm going to behave as a landlord, and then there's a certain, they have to approve the amount of rent that you're going to charge, and there's a scale that you have to follow there as well. So and that's called payment standards. So if you've got a rental and you want to rent to a Section 8 resident, it's I don't know, it depends on where you're at, but it's a 30-day process, 60 days at the most. And if you live in Chattanooga, you've got renters coming out of your ears because there's not enough Section 8 landlords in Chattanooga. Plenty of other places, but Chattanooga, I pick on Chattanooga because I know that 2/3 of Section 8 voucher holders in Chattanooga can't find a landlord that will do what you're asking. So anyway, hope that answered your question. All right, next up. I got my notice of approval to be placed on a waiting list. However, my notice noted that my housing voucher would be statewide. I applied in Illinois, but don't want to live in Illinois. Is this true? All right. I have to process this one. I got my notice of approval to be placed on a waiting list. However, my notice noted that my housing voucher would be statewide. I applied in Illinois, but don't want to live in Illinois. Is this true? There's not enough information here. If your voucher is going to be statewide, then perhaps you applied to a state agency that manages the voucher program in rural areas. But many of the times, those agencies break their waiting list up into individual counties. So I'm not completely following what you're asking. Now, the second part there, and you kind of do have a two-part question here. I applied in Illinois, but don't want to live in Illinois. Well, if you applied in Illinois, you're going to have to live in Illinois, at least for a year. So when there's something called portability. You're actually allowed to take a voucher and move it with you elsewhere. However, if you don't already live in the jurisdiction of the housing authority that's issuing that voucher and you're moving there to get that voucher, you must stay in the jurisdiction of the housing authority for 12 months before you can take it elsewhere. So if it's being issued in Illinois, you've got to live in Illinois in the jurisdiction of that housing authority for at least a year before you can move it. So hopefully that answered enough of the question, but the details were kind of sparse. All right, Nate, what else we got? Okay. I have bad credit and past evictions. I just received a Vash voucher, but will my past hinder me from finding housing? Okay, Vash. That is Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing. This is a very small program. That's really, it is part of the Section 8 program. And it was created, I think, in 2008 or 2009 as part of the Veterans Homelessness Initiative. I want to think there's about $50 million a year allocated to this out of the, I think the tenant-based voucher program is like 9 or 10 billion. Of that, about $50 million is specifically set aside for veterans, and this particular program is managed in conjunction with Veterans Affairs. So literally, a housing authority may have an allocation, or may have an allocation of Veterans Affairs supportive housing vouchers, but they get the veterans are referred to them, to the program, through the Department of Veterans Affairs. So it's quite different than the traditional Section 8 waiting list program where you apply to a waiting list at the housing authority level. You actually have to go through basically a counselor at Veterans Affairs to be part of that program. Once you get through that, it operates just like the Section 8 program. It's a voucher. So the question is, I have bad credit and past evictions. I just received a veterans voucher, but will my past hinder me from finding housing? So housing authorities don't do credit checks, and unless you owe money to that housing authority or another housing authority, bad credit usually doesn't affect whether or not you receive a voucher. However, it does have an impact on whether or not you can find a landlord who's willing to rent to you. If you're listening at the beginning of the chat, I was talking about landlords that believe that Section 8 recipients aren't good tenants, that they tear up apartments, they don't pay their bills, they do drugs, whatever. They're wrong about that, but there's a lot of landlords out there that think that. Well, you are going to have a credit check done usually these days when you apply, whether it's a mom and pop or a larger apartment community. You are going to agree to have both a credit check and a criminal background check done. And the credit check, unlike a credit check that you do when you buy a car, the credit checks for rental property normally include an eviction history. So if you do have past evictions, that's going to show up. So I need you to be prepared for this. Don't think that it may just not show up. They're going to find out. When you apply, they're going to find out that you have bad credit and that you have past evictions. So be prepared to have that conversation with them. Be prepared to talk to that potential landlord about your situation. Show the landlord how you have changed, how you're doing a better job managing your bills. Talk to them about why you have bad credit and the steps you're taking to improve it. Talk to them about why you had evictions. Hopefully the evictions weren't because of things you did. But if the eviction was for non-payment and you fell on hard times, you lost your job, that's a lot easier to explain than if you were arrested for domestic violence or a drug offense. That's going to be a lot harder to talk about with a potential landlord. Because you're coming through the Veterans Affairs program too, I think you have an opportunity perhaps to talk with the counselor who's from Veterans Affairs, who's putting you through that process, and the folks at the housing authority. Talk to them about it, see what they think. But my opinion is that you still have an opportunity to explain your case and tell potential landlords why you have bad credit, why you have evictions, what you've done to try and rectify that, and then if that's financial, the good thing is you have a voucher that's helping you with the rent payment. So hopefully that answered your question. All right, what else do I got, Nate? Okay, my question is about the Pierce County, Washington, Section 8 opening. Do I have to call at midnight, get an application, and send it in like you had mentioned in South Carolina? Do you have any idea how long the list is? Do you know what date it has to be turned in by? Okay, just so you know, I don't know anything about Pierce County, Washington specifically. Nate has just thrown up on the big screen the Pierce County opening, and I'm going to scan it really quick. It says, we're tracking the status of Pierce County Housing Authority Section 8 House Choice Voucher waiting list. This is what we know. It is opening on November 16th until November 19th. To apply, complete the online pre-application that will be available on the pre-application. Okay, all right. So, no, this is not like the Rock Hill, South Carolina application I just talked about, where you have to pick up a paper application between certain dates and then return it on a different date. In fact, just FYI, that's really rare. But what Rock Hill's doing is extremely rare. They don't, housing authorities don't normally do it that way. I've seen it done one or two times before. And that one or two times may have been actually Rock Hill last year. So no, this particular opening in Pierce County, Washington opens on November 16th and it closes on November 19th, and it's an online application. So anytime during that period, anytime between the 16th and the 19th, you go online, you fill the application out, and then, let's see, Nate, do we know if it's a lottery or is everybody going on?
I think it's lottery. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a lottery, and they're placing 1,500 qualified applicants on the waiting list. So that means that between the 16th and 19th of November, you can go and apply online. And then after that, after it closes, they're going to randomly pick 1,500 of the people who apply between the 16th and the 19th. And they're going to put those 1,500 people randomly on the waiting list, which means that you may not make it on the waiting list at all. It's a lottery. And so they'll notify you following the 19th. Normally it's 2 to 4 weeks that they let people know. And they'll usually do that via email, whether or not you made the 1,500. Sometimes they don't send you a notice if you didn't make it. They only send you a notice if you did. So if you don't hear from them, it's probably not good news. But I would wait for at least 2 or 3 weeks before you start calling or emailing them for details. But remember, the 16th to the 19th, you need to apply. Do you have an idea how long the waiting list is? Do you know what date it has to be turned in by? So turned in implies paper application. It's not paper. Remember, it's an online application. You have to apply between the 16th and the 19th. And do you have any idea how long the list is? I do not. We don't normally have that information. Housing authorities sometimes can't even tell you how long the waiting list is. We would, if the housing authority talks about how long their waiting list is, if they tell us, because we always call them and verify every one of these openings, if they tell us how long their waiting list is, then we'll include that in our publication. But for the most part, they don't. They say, well, we don't know, because you never know. There's so many factors that go into it, and it is kind of difficult to estimate how long the waiting list is. So we can't answer that question very well. So anyway, I hope that helped. All right, what do we have, Nate? About how much is a 1-bedroom voucher in LA? Okay. So that's not how it works. A housing voucher, no matter where you are in the country, it's not, there isn't an amount that they pay, that voucher is good for. That you're going to pay 30% of your income for rent. Now, there is going to be a 1-bedroom rent limit, that the rent for a Section 8 house couldn't go over, right? So that's part of the payment standards. So you have to find a rental that doesn't exceed X, a 1-bedroom apartment that which the rent is less than X. But the voucher itself isn't assigned a rent value. So to find out what that rent limit is for a 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles, just go to affordablehousingonline.com, type in Los Angeles, California. And if you scan down, you'll see something called fair market rents, FMRs. And I think there's also there's information adjacent to that about how to determine what the 1-bedroom rent limit would be. Now remember, that's a general limit on an entire market area, and the housing authority may have set lower rents if the property is located in a lower rent district than that maximum rent allowed, then it may be a lower limit that they publish. So that's only a guideline. The information you can find on our site is only a guideline. The housing authority specifically would have more information. So, all right. Do you offer assistance in Spanish? I apologize, but we don't. I chalk that up as one of my educational weaknesses. One of my regrets is having not learned to speak and read and write Spanish. And we're a small company. We only have, including myself, 5 employees, and we have not embarked on the task of translating and finding a spokesperson that can do, for example, this chat in Spanish. We can certainly try. We try to help anyone who posts on Facebook. We have one person who specifically sits on Facebook all day and tries to respond to anyone who posts there with questions. And Facebook's great because they have a translate button. So if you post a question in Spanish on our Facebook page, then we can just hit that translate button and get a rough translation, and then we can help you. But we don't have we don't publish any specific guidance in Spanish. You can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/affordable housing online com. I think, is that right, Nate? Or just, if you would, just post a link to our Facebook page. Okay, what do we have? Next question. Answer question. Can you qualify for Section 8 while waiting for your disability benefits compensation? Of course. Yeah. Qualifying for Section 8 is basically you have to earn a certain amount or less to qualify for Section 8. And that really has nothing to do with whether or not your disability benefits have come through or not. In fact, without the disability benefits, you're more likely to qualify, right? Because you don't have that disability income. And I have to check the table. There's actually a table where Section 8 says, okay, yeah, this is counted in income and this isn't. So for example, food stamps are not included as income, but welfare assistance is. And I can't remember disability benefits. I think disability benefit compensation is actually counted as income. But yeah, you can qualify for Section 8 while you're still waiting and aren't currently receiving those disability benefits. You don't even need to, because they're not real yet, they've not been awarded, you don't even need to put those on your application. But when you do get them, you'll need to update your application, or if you already have a voucher, you need to let the housing authority know, because they will need to adjust the voucher based on that income. So, okay, what else we have? All right, now, if anybody wants to come on screen and ask me a question, just hit that call-in button right there underneath of me. I love when our users come into the chat room and ask questions. And it's really easy. Just hit that call-in button and I'll try and answer your question for you. I'll move on to the next one that was submitted over in the chat though. I am trying to port my voucher to a housing authority that is absorbing. Can you please help me with this? Well, so absorbing, porting is a complicated process. HUD, I don't know, 2 months ago, released it's called a final rule. It's a federal process when writing regulations, where a federal agency, they have to issue a proposed rule, and the proposed rule has a long list of ways in which they're going to administer a federal housing program, the rules and regulations that they're going to establish, and then that gives the public an opportunity to comment. It gives housing authorities the opportunity to say, well, this rule isn't good for us, it causes problems, or it gives you potential voucher recipient or a nonprofit who's advocating for low-income people. It gives them an opportunity to chime in and say, yeah, but this is not helpful for potential voucher recipients, or this causes a problem, or it makes it more difficult. So anyway, final rule published a couple of months ago, supposed to make it easier and a smoother process. I spent a couple of hours reading and trying to understand that final rule, and we'll eventually publish a blog post talking about the final rule and what it means for you, the renter. And again, that final rule is supposed to make it simpler, and I don't believe that it has. I don't believe that it's, in my opinion, it's not made it easier for you, the renter, you, the voucher holder, to understand. But I'll try and give you as simple an answer as possible. And that simple answer is you really need to rely on the housing authorities involved, right? So in every port transaction, you have two housing authorities that you have to deal with. You have the housing authority that issued and has been managing the voucher, so where you live now, and you have the housing authority that you want to move to. They have to talk to each other. And the whole absorbing thing is basically, there's some housing authorities out there that say, we're not going to accept any incoming vouchers, we're not absorbing, so you have to go somewhere else. Technically, the law says that they can't do that. However, there have been, the final rule establishes some very, very specific occasions when they are allowed to do that, and say we're not absorbing. If you have found a housing authority that is absorbing, then I'm sorry, but the best thing to do is to just have a good line of communication between the housing authority you're leaving and the one that you're going to, and make sure that you always do everything they ask you to do. If they ask you to fill out a form, fill out the form and do it immediately. If they send you a letter to do something and you wait a month to do it, and then you fill it out and then you say, hey, I'm waiting. Why? How come it's taking so long? Well, it's because you waited a month to fill the form out. So whenever they send you a request for information or ask you to do something, make sure you do it. And again, make sure that both housing authorities are talking to each other. So that's my recommendation there. I need help. Please call me. Okay. Other than this weekly chat, we do not have the capability to help folks one-on-one over the phone. There's 5 of us, including me, and we are web publishers and web researchers and social media managers. I'm the only affordable housing professional on the team. I'm the only one that's equipped to answer these types of questions. We do have social media managers that help people out on Facebook, and that understand basic housing programs and issues, and then they'll turn to me and ask for specific guidance when helping someone. But we can't. I'm sorry, we can't do phone assistance. If you want to go to Facebook and ask a question, one of our folks can try and give you a good answer. And then if you want to call in, you can hit that call in button and try and hit me up here in the chat. I do this once a week at 3 o'clock. So hopefully I can help you. All right, let's see. I don't see any waiting list information for my town. What does that mean? Okay, so there are 2,320 housing authorities in America that manage a Section 8 housing choice voucher waiting list or program. They all have waiting lists, but we'll call it programs. Not every town in America has a housing authority and therefore doesn't have a Section 8 waiting list. Not every county in America does. Most small cities and up do, and most larger counties do. But that doesn't mean that there are certain towns or counties in America that you can't use Section 8, right? It's a federal program, which means it covers every square inch of America. Everyone who lives in America and every square inch of the map, you can access Section 8 assistance. However, if it's a rural area, most of the time that program is managed by a state agency, usually in the state capital, usually the State Housing Finance Agency. Sometimes they're managed regionally. Sometimes even it's contracted out to a private company. But if you go to Affordable Housing Online and you look up your town and there's nothing there, normally it's one of two things. Number one, your town's so small, we don't have good information on who manages the waiting list for your town. Or number two, it's managed by the state agency. So I would, in that case, go to the state level. So on that page, click on, if you're looking in Maryland, click on Maryland on our page, and it'll take you to the Maryland affordable housing page. And a lot of times we'll have information about the housing authorities there. So next question. Is there a website I can go on to check my waiting list status? Well, yes, if you applied to a waiting list that is an online list and they subscribe to a software company that, if they subscribe to a software vendor that allows for voucher applicants to check their status, yes. So for example, I know King County, Washington, which is across the sound, I think, from Seattle. They have a really great website, and they have a software vendor that provides actually there's actually on their website where you can just say, you can type in your information and boom, it'll tell you exactly where you are on the list. But I can tell you that's very rare. But there are, most of the major cities that have online waiting lists, you should be able to log in. You would have been given credentials when you first applied. You should be able to log in and check your status, at least find out where you're on the list. It's probably not going to tell you how long of a wait you've got, but you should be able to at least check your waiting list status. Sorry, I'm starting to get a very scratchy throat. Okay, so I've got another question in the queue. Looks like I have about 41 folks in the blab right now. If you have a question, if you want to come on camera and ask, I always love it when our users join the chat and ask a question live. All you have to do is click that call-in button, and I will do my best to answer your question. If you're shy and you don't want to come on camera, you can always post in the comments, and that's where most of these questions are coming from right now. So go ahead and post, and we'll make sure to try and get to it. I'll probably be doing this for about 10 more minutes, so get your questions in. If you want to come on camera with me, let's do that in the next 10 minutes. I'm going to try and wrap this up around 4. All right. My husband just lost his job, and we are about to lose our home. Is there a program for us? First off, I'm sorry to hear that. It's a terrible thing when it's happening to you. You hear about it all the time. It's happened to millions of Americans over the years, but it's always a terrible thing when it hits close to home and when it's happening to you. So first, hang in there. Don't give up. Keep working. Keep your nose to the grindstone. Looking for a job. Do everything you can to work with the mortgage company on your mortgage. And the answer to your question is yes, there are programs. So following the mortgage crisis in 2009, there were more than one mortgage assistance, foreclosure assistance programs out there. Nate, remind me, I'll need to research it, but I know that HUD has a database of local service providers that have foreclosure assistance programs. I'm a rental housing expert. I don't normally work in foreclosures and home ownership. But I do know that that HUD does have plenty of foreclosure assistance programs, and they're localized, administered by local nonprofit organizations and counseling agencies. So Nate, remind me to do that research following this up, and we'll post a link to that. You can also try on your own. You can just Google HUD foreclosure assistance counseling agencies, and I guarantee you know how good Google is. Google can read your mind. They'll probably send you right to that HUD page I'm talking about. It's all I'm going to do when I get back to my desk is just is Google it like that. So I I can't specifically tell you how those programs work. Again, I'm a rental housing expert, and I don't do a lot of homeownership and foreclosure stuff, but we'll try and point you in the right direction. Okay, how do I know what area my housing authority covers? Yeah, it may seem like that's a simple question, right? The Chicago Housing Authority covers Chicago, except that when you get out into other parts of in rural America or in counties, it can become very difficult. In fact, I mean, there are places like Mississippi that are cut up into regions. So there's like Mississippi Regional Housing Authority, III, Mississippi Regional Housing Authority, VII, and the map is cut up really strangely. So it is a good question. We have done our best to try and research each housing authority, and there's close to 4,000 of them across America that either have Section 8 or public housing or both. We've done our best to try and research all of them and map out their jurisdictions. So if you go to Affordable Housing Online and you enter your city and state or your county, if you go, sorry, got distracted. My screen's jumping all over the place. If you go and enter your city and state or your county, we should immediately tell you right underneath that search that it's served by X housing authority. So on our housing authority page, it'll tell you what area it serves. Okay. All right. Do I have any more questions, Nate? A couple of questions jumped on, but they're gone now. So, oh, there we go. I have been trying to get affordable housing for years. I'm 26 with 3 kids. What can I do? Do I need Section 8? Well, I can't tell you if you need Section 8. I can tell you that if you earn less than 50% of the area median income, you have 3 children, so that's for a family of 4 in your area. If you earn less than 50%, you qualify for it. And in all likelihood, if you're earning less than 50% of the area median income, you're struggling to pay your rent. So I think that's for you to determine, but you probably would say that you need it. If you've already applied, so I have been trying to get affordable housing for years. I'm assuming that you've already applied and that you're on a waiting list, right? So I would keep doing that, but don't just apply for Section 8. You should also be looking at other types of housing assistance, including project-based Section 8 properties. So these are privately owned properties that offer Section 8 assistance. It's the same thing as the voucher program, except that assistance is tied to the actual the apartment property. You should take a look at low-income housing tax credit properties. You should consider public housing. You should consider all of your options. Just don't sit around and wait for Section 8, because sometimes it takes 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, depending on where you're at with Section 8. And then also, if you're willing to move, you could consider applying to various Section 8 programs that open up across the country. You just have to, when you do that, if you're awarded a voucher, because some areas move faster than others, but if you're awarded a voucher, you have to move there for a year. So you got to be prepared to move. I hope that answers the question. Okay, let's see. I'm new to this. I'm on disability and have been for 3 years. First, how do I apply for housing help? Also, being on disability, would that be a different wait list? So, no, it is not a different waiting list. Most of the time, if you're talking about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, they don't normally have a separate waiting list for people who are on disability. However, many of them have a preference for persons with disabilities, but it's the same waiting list. So when you apply for the assistance, make sure that you're ticking that box that says that you have a disability. Now you need to be prepared to document that properly. You've got to have that official disability letter. You got to be able to prove that you have an official documented disability. So how do you apply? you apply just like everyone else through a Section 8 application, waiting list opening. So a good way to find that, go to Affordable Housing Online, search for your area, or when you go to Affordable Housing Online, if you click the Open Section 8 waiting list button, the big green button at the top, that will give you a list of waiting lists that are open now, opening soon. And so that's how you would apply, just like anyone else, even folks without disability. All right, looks like we actually have somebody wanting to come in and ask a question, so I'm going to try and bring you in. Shantae Welsh. Let's see. While we're bringing Shantae in, if anyone else wants to come on screen and ask me a question, just hit that call in button. Hi, Shantae.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I've been applying for Section 8 for so many years, even public-based housing. It's not that I was just looking for Section 8, but I'm looking for something that goes by your income. And I'm actually in Binghamton now. I just applied in Marietta housing. And it's just, Section 8 takes so long. And it's just like, I don't know what to do now. I have 3 children. You know, I cannot afford to pay $750 rent, you know. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what other options, what other steps should I take.
Okay, I think I just answered your question. I don't know if you were listening.
I probably wasn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you're 26. You have 3 kids. You've been applying for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, first of all, Section 8 takes a long time,
right.
As you know. Depends on where you're at, but it can take from 2 to 10, 12 years, depending, New York City's waiting list has been closed for 15 years.
Right.
I wouldn't count on Section 8 to solve any problems. But there are other programs out there that you should be able to access. One that comes to mind is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. It is the largest, they call it production program, basically the largest funding program in America that actually produces apartment units that are considered a lower rent than your typical market rent. You've got project-based Section 8 properties, which are privately owned apartment buildings that have a Section 8 contract that is attached to the building itself, and it's not so. The voucher, the renter, take that voucher and you take it with you wherever you go. Well, there's this project-based program, which is just as large, but that subsidy stays with each individual apartment unit. So you have those types of opportunities. Those waiting lists are typically significantly shorter. And I think you mentioned public housing, but you also have that option. Public housing waiting lists tend to be much shorter than the housing choice voucher and open more frequently as well. So you have that option. I would suggest that you go to our website, Affordable Housing Online, type in your city, and then look to see, look down below for project-based Section 8, low-income housing tax credit properties, and just, start researching those individual properties. Unfortunately, there's not some master waiting list that you can apply to for all of those opportunities. Those are managed on a property-by-property level. Usually in big cities, you apply to the public housing waiting list and you're applying to 20 different buildings, but when you get down to the project-based assistance properties and the low-income housing tax credit properties, you're applying one by one. So that would be my advice.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. All right, Nate, do we have any more questions? I said I was going to wrap it up around 4 o'clock, and it is 4:03, almost on time. I want to thank everyone for joining. Sorry about the earlier technical difficulties. We have, about 35 people watching live right now. During the whole chat, we had 40 or 50. We're going to continue hoping that Blab can work out some of these technology issues. We had to very early in the Blab shut down most folks and exclude the 200 or so that had tried to come in. But we'll try next week to get to do it again. And until then, thank you for joining me. Thank you for using Affordable Housing Online to help you in your search for affordable housing assistance. I'll talk